The afternoon sun blazed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Holt Enterprises, casting golden rectangles across the marble floors. Jasmine readjusted her navy blazer and checked her reflection in the glass. Partition, professional, composed, untouchable. That's what 2 years as Cameron Holt's executive assistant had taught her to be. Jasmine. Conference room. Now. Cameron's voice crackled through the intercom. Sharp and commanding as always, she grabbed her tablet and walked briskly toward his office. Cameron Holt stood at his desk, his charcoal suit perfectly tailored to his athletic frame. At 35, he'd built a tech empire that made Silicon Valley executives nervous. His reputation was legendary, brilliant, ruthless, and emotionally unavailable. The Miami deal closes Friday. We're flying out tonight, he announced, without looking up from his phone. Jasmine's stomach tightened. Miami meant 3 days alone with him. 3 days of maintaining the professional distance that had become increasingly difficult to sustain. I'll prepare the files, she responded, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. The private jet touched down in Miami just after midnight. The city glowed beneath them, alive with neon lights and endless possibilities. Their hotel, the Oceanic Grand, overlooked the beach where waves crashed against the shore in rhythmic whispers. Cameron had booked adjoining suites. Jasmine stood in her room, staring at the connecting door between them. She'd spent 2 years perfecting the art of being invisible, of anticipating his needs before he voiced them, of reading the micro-expressions that flickered across his face during negotiations. But lately something had shifted. The way his gaze lingered a fraction too long, the brush of his hand when passing documents, the tension that crackled between them like static. Electricity before a storm, the next morning brought the meeting with Quantum Solutions, startup Cameron intended to acquire. Jasmine sat beside him, taking notes as he dismantled their CEO's arguments with surgical precision. But she noticed something different. Every major point he made, he glanced at her first, as if seeking silent confirmation. When the meeting ended successfully, Cameron's hand found the small of her back as they exited. The touch sent electricity up her spine. Dinner tonight, he said. Not a question. Never a question with Cameron. They met at sunset on the hotel's rooftop restaurant. Miami spread beneath them in a tapestry of lights and shadows. Cameron had shed his usual armor. No tie, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, hair slightly mussed from the ocean breeze. 2 years, he said suddenly, swirling the wine in his glass. You've never asked me anything personal? Jasmine paused, fork halfway to her mouth. It's not my place. What if I want it to be? The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Jasmine's heart hammered against her ribs. This was dangerous territory. Mr. Holt, I think Cameron, he interrupted. When we're alone, call me Cameron. His eyes held hers, and for the first time, she saw past the CEO exterior. There was loneliness there, a hunger for connection that matched her own. The wine flowed. Conversation drifted from business to music, from childhood memories to secret dreams. Jasmine learned that Cameron played piano but hadn't touched the keys in years, that he'd built his empire to prove something to a father who died before seeing his success, that he noticed everything about her, how she tucked her hair behind her left ear when nervous, how she always ordered her coffee black at exactly 8:15, how she hummed softly when she thought no one was listening. You see me? She whispered. Stunned by the revelation. I've always seen you, Cameron replied. I've just been too much of a coward to admit it. The walk back to their rooms felt eternal and instantaneous all at once. Jasmine's mind screamed warnings, professional boundaries, power dynamics, career suicide. But her heart beat a different rhythm, one that had been suppressed for 24 months. At her door, Cameron stopped. The hallway was empty, silent except for the distant sound of waves through an open window. Lee, tell me to leave, he said, his voice rough. Tell me this is wrong and I'll walk away. We'll pretend this never happened. Jasmine looked up at him. Really looked. Beneath the designer suits and billion-dollar confidence was a man terrified of vulnerability. Someone who'd built walls so high he'd forgotten. It's what it felt like to let someone in. She didn't tell him to leave. Instead, she unlocked her door. Cameron followed her inside, closing it softly behind them. The moon painted silver stripes across the room, turning everything into a dream. When he kissed her, it was nothing like she'd imagined. Not demanding or controlling, but questioning, almost reverent. His hands framed her face like she was something precious, breakable. "I've wanted this since the day you corrected my presentation in front of the entire board," he murmured against her lips. "You were the only person brave enough to tell me I was wrong." Jasmine laughed softly, then pulled him closer. The professional armor they'd both worn for so long fell away, leaving only two people who'd been circling each other in careful orbits. Finally colliding, the night unfolded slowly. A symphony of whispered confessions and gentle touches. Cameron traced the curve of her shoulder like a cartographer mapping new territory. Jasmine discovered the scar on his ribs from a childhood accident. The way he shivered when she kissed his neck. How he said her name like a prayer in the aftermath. They lay tangled in Egyptian cotton sheets, Miami's heartbeat pulsing beyond the windows. Cameron's fingers drew lazy patterns on her arm. "Stay with me," he whispered. "Not just tonight, stay." But morning brought clarity and consequences. Jasmine woke to an empty bed and a handwritten note on hotel stationery. "Emergency call. Back by noon. Last night was perfect." The word mocked her as reality crashed down. She was his employee. He was her boss. This could destroy everything she'd worked for. By the time Cameron returned, Jasmine had made her decision. She stood in the suite's living room, dressed in her armor once more, tailored dress, hair pulled back. "Expression neutral. We need to talk," she said. Cameron's face lit up, then fell as he registered her tone. "Jasmine," she held up a folded paper. Her resignation letter, written in careful block letters to keep her hands from shaking. "Last night was a mistake," she said, forcing the words past the lump in her throat. "I'm grateful for the opportunity to work with you, but I can't continue as your assistant. Not after this." Cameron stared at the letter like it was a bomb. Then, slowly, deliberately, he tore it in half. "No." Jasmine blinked. "Excuse me." I said no. "I don't accept your resignation." He stepped closer, and she saw the same vulnerability from last night, warring with his CEO instincts. "Last night wasn't a mistake, Jasmine. It was the most honest thing I've done in years, and I'm not letting you run away from it. Can't just refuse my resignation. That's not how this works. Watch me." His jaw set in that stubborn line she knew meant he'd made up his mind. "We'll figure this out together, but I'm not losing you. Not because I was finally brave enough to show you how I feel." Jasmine's carefully constructed walls began to crack. "Cameron, this is impossible. The company, your reputation, my career, I don't care." The words came out fierce, desperate. "For 2 years I've hidden behind professionalism because I was terrified of this. Of feeling something I couldn't control, but I can't go back to pretending you're just my assistant. Not anymore." The torn resignation letter fluttered to the floor between them. Outside, Miami continued its dance of sun and shadow, oblivious to the two people standing at a crossroads that would change everything. Jasmine looked into Cameron's eyes and saw her own fear reflected back. But beneath it, something else flickered. Hope. Fragile, terrifying hope. "What do we do now?" she whispered. Cameron reached for her hand. "We start by being honest. No more hiding." But neither of them could predict how complicated honest would become. The flight back to New York felt different. Jasmine sat across from Cameron in the private jet, their eyes meeting over laptops and coffee cups with an intensity that made the air thick. Every accidental touch sent sparks through her skin. Every shared glance carried the weight of their Miami night. But reality waited at 30,000 feet below. Monday morning at Holt Enterprises brought whispers. Jasmine felt eyes following her through the corridors, heard conversations die as she approached. Nina Cruz, her best friend from accounting, cornered her in the break room. "Girl, what happened in Miami?" "The entire floor is buzzing," Nina said, pouring 2 cups of coffee. Jasmine's hands trembled slightly as she reached for her cup. "Nothing happened. We closed the deal." Nina raised one perfectly shaped eyebrow. "Jasmine Reed, I've known you for 3 years. You're a terrible liar." And Cameron Holt has been staring at you like you're the only person in the building. Before Jasmine could respond, the man himself appeared in the doorway. Misread my office? We need to review the quantum contracts. His tone was professional, but his eyes told a different story. Nina's knowing smile followed Jasmine out of the break room. Cameron's office was a sanctuary of glass and steel, overlooking Manhattan. He closed the door, drew the blinds, and suddenly, they were in their own world. I can't stop thinking about you, he admitted, running a hand through his dark hair. It's affecting my concentration. My mother called this morning about the charity gala next month, and I couldn't focus because I was remembering how you looked in the moonlight. Jasmine's heart raced. Cameron, we agreed to be professional at work. I know. I'm trying. God, I'm trying. He stepped closer, his cologne wrapping around her. But then you walk into a room and everything else disappears. The intercom buzzed, shattering the moment. Cameron's assistant announced a visitor, Tyler Bennett from Bennett Marketing Group. Tyler was everything Cameron wasn't. Warm, approachable, with an easy smile that reached his hazel eyes. He'd been consulting with Holt Enterprises for 6 months, and Jasmine had always found him charming, but kept her distance. Cameron, good to see you, Tyler said, shaking hands before turning to Jasmine. And Miss Reed, I was hoping to catch you. I'm hosting a gallery opening Friday night. Contemporary art, great wine, terrible cheese. Would you like to join me? The question hung in the air. Jasmine felt Cameron tense beside her. That's very kind, but I usually keep work and personal life separate, she replied carefully. Tyler's smile never wavered. I respect that. But this isn't a work event. It's 2 people who might enjoy the same art. No pressure, no expectations. After Tyler left, Cameron's jaw was tight. You should go. Jasmine turned to him, confused. What? To the gallery you should go. His voice was strained. I can't ask you to put your life on hold while we figure out what this is. That's not fair. Cameron, I mean it, Jasmine. Tyler's a good guy. Maybe that's what you need. Someone without complications, without a history of pushing people away. The words sounded like they were costing him something vital. The week crawled by in excruciating slowness. Jasmine found herself agreeing to the gallery opening, partly out of curiosity, partly because Cameron's words had stung more than she wanted to admit. Friday evening, she wore a burgundy dress that hugged her curves. Tyler picked her up in a classic Mercedes, his appreciation evident but respectful. The gallery was intimate, filled with abstract paintings that seemed to capture emotions in color and form. Tyler was attentive, funny, genuinely interested in her opinions. He didn't talk about work. Instead, he asked about her dreams, her favorite books, the places she wanted to travel. You're different than I expected, Tyler said, as they stood before a painting of a stormy ocean. At the office, you're so composed, almost guarded. But tonight I can see the real you peeking through. Jasmine smiled, but it felt hollow, because the real her was back in a Miami hotel room, tangled in sheets with a man who was too scared to fully let her in. They were laughing over the truly terrible cheese when Jasmine's phone buzzed. A text from Cameron. How's the gallery? She stared at the screen. He'd told her to go, practically pushed her toward Tyler. But now he was checking in, unable to let go completely. Tyler noticed her distraction. Work emergency? Something like that? He studied her face with surprising insight. You're in love with him, aren't you, Cameron Holt? Jasmine's breath caught. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. Tyler's voice was gentle, not accusatory. The way you look at each other when you think no one's watching, the tension in every room you share. It's pretty obvious to anyone paying attention. Tears pricked Jasmine's eyes. It's complicated. The best things usually are. Tyler handed her his handkerchief, a gentlemanly gesture that made her smile despite everything. For what it's worth, I think he's an idiot if he doesn't fight for you. And if he doesn't, I'm more than willing to try to make you forget him. The honesty was refreshing. Dangerous, but refreshing. Over the next 2 weeks, Jasmine found herself caught between 2 worlds. Cameron at work, all heated glances and stolen moments in empty conference rooms. Tyler outside work, offering uncomplicated affection and the promise of something easier. Then the symptoms started. First came the exhaustion. bone deep and unshakable. Then the nausea that hit her every morning around 8 o'clock. Jasmine dismissed it as stress until Nina noticed her rushing to the bathroom for the third time in a week. "When was your last period?" Nina asked bluntly over lunch. Jasmine's fork clattered to her plate. She mentally counted back, and ice flooded her veins. 6 weeks. It had been 6 weeks since Miami. The pregnancy test sat on her bathroom counter like a ticking bomb. Its pink lines clear and undeniable. She was carrying Cameron Holt's baby. Jasmine sat on the cold tile floor, arms wrapped around her knees. Her whole life had just shifted on its axis. She needed to tell Cameron, but terror paralyzed her. Would he think she'd trapped him? Would he demand she end the pregnancy? Would this finally push him away completely? Her phone rang. "Tyler. Hey, I know this is last minute, but there's an amazing Italian place in Brooklyn. Want to grab dinner?" Before she could think, Jasmine heard herself saying yes. She needed normalcy, needed to pretend for one more night that her world wasn't spinning out of control. Tyler was his usual charming self, telling stories that made her laugh despite the secret growing inside her. He reached across the table, taking her hand. "Jasmine, I know you're dealing with something. You don't have to tell me what. But I want you to know I'm here. Whatever you need." The kindness broke something in her. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and Tyler moved to her side of the booth, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Neither of them saw Cameron, standing outside the restaurant window. He'd come looking for her, driven by an urgency he couldn't name. All week, something had felt off. His Ben had been pale, distracted, avoiding his eyes. He'd told himself to give her space, but the fear that he was losing her had driven him into the night. Now he watched her cry in another man's arms, and something inside him shattered. Cameron turned and walked away, hands clenched in his pockets. He'd been right. She deserved someone better, someone who knew how to love without fear. Tyler Bennett could give her that, but with each step, the pain intensified. 'Cause loving Jasmine meant wanting her happiness, even if it destroyed him. The next morning, Jasmine arrived at work determined to tell Cameron everything. But his office door was closed, voices raised inside. Through the glass, she saw Rebecca Holt, Cameron's mother. Jabbing a finger at her son's chest, Jasmine had only met Rebecca twice. The woman was elegance personified, silver hair, designer suits, and a smile that never reached her calculating eyes. When the door finally opened, Rebecca swept past Jasmine without acknowledgement. Cameron stood at his window, shoulders rigid. "Cameron." He didn't turn. "My mother saw us. In Miami. She has photos of us entering your hotel room." Jasmine's blood ran cold. "What?" "She's threatening to leak them unless I end whatever this is. Says it will damage the company's reputation, make me look unprofessional." His voice was hollow. "She's probably right, Cameron. Look at me." He turned, and the emptiness in his eyes terrified her. "I saw you last night. With Tyler. Through the restaurant window." He held up a hand when she tried to speak. "You deserve that. You deserve easy and uncomplicated, not this mess." "Cameron, I'm pleased, Jasmine. Let me say this." He took a shaking breath. "I'm not good at this. At feelings. At vulnerability. My father taught me that emotions are weaknesses, and my mother reinforced it every day of my childhood. When you gave me that resignation letter, I panicked. But maybe you were right. Maybe we should have left it as one perfect night." The words she'd been about to say died in her throat. "I'm pregnant." 2 words that would change everything. But, looking at Cameron's face, seeing the walls rebuilding brick by brick, Jasmine realized he was giving her an out, and maybe she should take it. "If that's what you want," she whispered. "It's not about what I want. It never has been." His smile was bitter. "Go be happy with Tyler, Jasmine. Forget about the broken billionaire who doesn't know how to love properly." Jasmine left his office, one hand pressed to her still flat stomach. In the elevator, tears finally came. She'd thought Cameron was different, thought what they shared in Miami was real. But he was just another man too scared to fight for what mattered. Nina found her in the parking garage, sobbing in her car. "Talk to me, honey." Through tears, Jasmine told her everything. Miami, the pregnancy, Tyler, Cameron's rejection. That stupid man, Nina said fiercely. He loves you, Jasmine. Anyone with eyes can see it. He's just terrified. Then he needs to get over it, because in 7 months, terrified won't be an option. That evening, Jasmine made an appointment with her doctor to confirm the pregnancy. As she sat in the waiting room, her phone buzzed with a message from Tyler. Dinner was wonderful. I'd like to do it again. Maybe make it official? Her thumb hovered over the reply button. Tyler was good, safe, ready to commit. Everything Cameron wasn't, but the heart wants what it wants. Regardless of logic, another message appeared, this one from Cameron. I need to see you, please. Jasmine closed her eyes. The baby inside her deserved the truth. Both men deserved the truth, but the truth had a way of destroying everything in its path. The rain hammered against the windows of Jasmine's apartment, matching the chaos in her heart. She'd agreed to meet Cameron, but on her terms, in her space. The doctor's confirmation lay on her coffee table. 8 weeks pregnant, healthy, due in March. The knock came at exactly 7 o'clock. Cameron stood in her doorway, soaked despite the umbrella in his hand. He looked different, almost vulnerable, his usual polish replaced by rumpled clothes and shadows under his eyes. Thank you for seeing me, he said quietly. Jasmine stepped aside, letting him in. They stood in her small living room, the space suddenly feeling intimate and suffocating. I was wrong, Cameron began, before she could speak. About everything. Pushing you toward Tyler, pretending I could just walk away. I've been a coward, Jasmine. Just like my father, just like every Holt man before me. Cameron, let me finish. Please? He ran a hand through his wet hair. After you left my office yesterday, I couldn't breathe. The thought of you with him, of losing you forever, it felt like dying. And I realized something. I've spent my entire life building walls to avoid the pain my father went through when my mother emotionally destroyed him. But in protecting myself, I've become exactly like her. Cold, controlling, afraid. Jasmine's hand unconsciously moved to her stomach. Why are you telling me this now? Because I love you. The words came out raw, honest. I've loved you since you walked into my office. 2 years ago and reorganized my entire filing system without asking permission. I loved you when you corrected me in front of the board. I loved you in Miami, and I love you now. And I'm done being too scared to say it. The declaration hung between them, beautiful and terrifying. Jasmine felt tears building. I need to tell you something, she whispered. Before she could continue, Cameron closed the distance between them. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. I'm not running anymore. I'm pregnant. Cameron's eyes widened, his gaze dropping to where her hand rested on her abdomen. Color drained from his face, then flooded back. The baby is mine? His voice cracked. Yes, from Miami. I found out a few days ago. Jasmine forced herself to meet his eyes. I was going to tell you, but then your mother showed up, and you pushed me away, and I thought maybe it would be easier for everyone if I had just handled this alone. Cameron sank onto her couch, head in his hands. Jasmine's heart shattered. This was the rejection she'd feared, the moment he'd realized she'd trapped him. But when he looked up, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. We're having a baby? The wonder in his voice caught her off guard. Yes, a baby. He stood, moving toward her slowly, reverently. His hands hovered near her stomach, asking permission. When she nodded, he placed his palms gently against her. There's a life in there. Part of you and part of me. Cameron, I know this isn't what you wanted. It's everything I wanted and was too afraid to dream about. He cupped her face, thumbs brushing away her tears. A family. With you. God, Jasmine, don't you see? You've given me the greatest gift imaginable. The kiss was different from Miami. Less desperate, more profound. A promise sealed in rain and revelation. They spent the night talking, planning, dreaming. Cameron admitted his terror, his fear of failing as a father the way his own had failed him. Jasmine shared her worries about balancing career and motherhood, about whether love could survive the reality of dirty diapers and sleepless nights. What about Tyler? Cameron asked as dawn painted the sky pink. I was never in love with him. He was safe, uncomplicated. Everything you weren't. Jasmine smiled softly. But I don't want safe. I want real, even if it's messy. We're definitely going to be messy, Cameron agreed, pulling her closer. Monday brought a new challenge. Rebecca Holt scheduled an emergency board meeting, and rumors swirled through Holt Enterprises like wildfire. Nina grabbed Jasmine in the hallway. His mother knows. About the baby. I don't know how, but she knows, and she's on the warpath. Jasmine's blood turned to ice. She found Cameron in the executive conference room, facing down his mother and 3 senior board members. This is a private meeting. Miss Reed, Rebecca said coldly. This concerns her directly, Cameron replied. Jasmine, please join us. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. Cameron, don't be foolish. This woman has clearly orchestrated careful mother. Cameron's voice dropped to a dangerous level. Choose your next words very carefully. She's pregnant with your child. Don't you see? She's trapped you, just like countless women have trapped wealthy men throughout history. Jasmine flinched, but Cameron stood, placing himself between her and his mother. Jasmine didn't trap me. She freed me. From your toxic expectations, from father's ghost, from the prison I built around my own heart. He looked at the board members. Yes, I'm going to be a father. Yes, Jasmine works for me. And yes, we're in love. If anyone has a problem with that, there's the door. Erupted. Board members argued about propriety and company image. Rebecca's face turned purple with rage. If you continue this relationship, I'll use my shares to call for a vote of no confidence, Rebecca threatened. I'll destroy you, Cameron. Then do it. Cameron's voice was steel. Because I'm not giving her up. Not for you, not for the company, not for anything. Jasmine touched his arm. Cameron, you've worked your entire life for this company. It means nothing without you. He turned to face her fully, ignoring their audience. I spent 35 years believing success meant power and control. But real success is standing in the rain with the woman you love, knowing that whatever comes, you'll face it together. Rebecca stood, her expression glacial. You'll regret this. The only thing I regret is not standing up to you sooner. Mother and son stared at each other, years of dysfunction and manipulation hanging between them. Finally, Rebecca gathered her designer handbag and left. Heels clicking sharply against marble, the board members followed, leaving Jasmine and Cameron alone in the conference room. You just chose me over your mother and potentially your company, Jasmine said, still processing. I chose us. Over fear, Cameron pulled her into his arms. My father never stood up to her. He let her control him until it destroyed him. I won't make the same mistake. 2 months later, Jasmine stood in front of a full-length mirror, examining her small baby bump. She'd officially resigned as Cameron's assistant, taking a position heading up a new division focused on corporate responsibility. No more whispers about favoritism or impropriety. Tyler had been surprisingly gracious, congratulating them both and admitting he'd known all along that her heart belonged. Elsewhere, Nina had thrown an elaborate baby shower, complete with ridiculous games and a cake shaped like a tiny business suit. And Rebecca? She'd sold her shares and moved to Paris, cutting off all contact. Cameron grieved the relationship that never was, but found peace in building something better with his own child. On a crisp October evening, Cameron and Jasmine stood on the rooftop of their new apartment overlooking Manhattan. The city sparkled below them, full of possibility. Nervous about becoming a father? Jasmine asked, leaning back against his chest. Terrified, he admitted. But the good kind of terrified? The kind that means you're about to do something important. We never talked about marriage, she said carefully. Cameron turned her to face him, dropping to one knee. From his pocket he produced a ring, simple and elegant. Jasmine Reed, you walked into my life and turned it upside down. You challenged me, frustrated me, and ultimately saved me from a life half-lived. You're carrying our miracle. And every day I wake up grateful that you didn't give up on the broken man who didn't know how to love properly, his voice thick with emotion. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life learning to be the man you and our baby deserve? Through happy tears, Jasmine nodded. Yes, 1,000 times yes. The ring slid onto her finger as the city lights twinkled their approval. When they kissed, Jasmine felt their baby flutter for the first time, as if celebrating along with them. 6 months later, on a snowy March morning, Cameron held his daughter for the first time. She had Jasmine's dark hair and his gray eyes, and when she wrapped her tiny fingers around his thumb, every wall he'd ever built crumbled to dust. "Hello, Grace," he whispered, the name they'd chosen together. "I'm your dad, and I promise to love you and your mother with everything I am."